freedom, pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So if
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining social issue of our time, the character crisis that we face in America and the threat that it poses to our freedoms as Americans. All of us have to do our part to honor our country's best ideals and to preserve this wonderful degree of freedom that we've enjoyed for so long and that so many have fought and died for. And that's why you hear the theme music that you hear at the beginning and end of this show, as opposed to any other theme. Given the content of the program, it might seem a little odd to some folks, but I firmly believe that the freedoms that we cherish and the great society that we built in this country all have to do with character. And when we have people of character in our country, the society blossoms, enterprise blossoms, and greatness flourishes across the land. We are great as a country when we are great as people of character, when we are great in character. I'm not the first one that called attention to that fact, nor will I probably be the last. But I'm one of those sounding the alarm these days about the character crisis that I believe threatens the very fabric of our society and the freedoms we enjoy, and invites the government to restrict our lives with rules and regulations that only people of character obey anyway. So if you want to join the discussion, I urge you to call in at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We've got a great program for you tonight. We're going to be talking about a really unpleasant case that made the news. You know, I never have to look very far for another egregious example of just exactly what I've been talking about week after week after week, about the character crisis that's among us and the threat that it poses to the fabric of our society and to the liberties that we enjoy. You never have to look very far. There's always some headline, and each time you think that you have heard it all, each time you think you've heard the last most outrageous thing you could possibly hear, something else comes along to top it. So I'm never wanting for examples to illustrate my points, and this past week has been no exception. But before I get into the main matter for today, I want to mention something that I have meant to mention a couple of times, and that is a couple of editions of In Sheep's Clothing in foreign publications. Japanese edition will be coming out soon, hopefully within the next 6 months or so. Same with the Russian edition of In Sheep's Clothing, the landmark international bestseller on manipulative people and disturbances of character of all types, but with main focus on the tactics that manipulators use to pull over the wool over your eyes and to hide their true character, to make you doubt yourself, to make you give in to their shenanigans and be duped by them, and how to deal with such people more effectively and empower yourself and enrich your life. So I just wanted to make that announcement. Also, I'm hoping that in addition to the Hungarian edition of In Sheep's Clothing, that we'll be adding a Hungarian edition of character disturbance, my follow-up in-depth study of disturbances of character, which I consider to be the phenomenon of our age. And in that book, I go into great depth about the character crisis, what's responsible for it, the manifestations of it, what kinds of character problems are coming to the attention of mental health professionals these days and other folks in the professional community, and what we can do about it. Especially in character disturbance, I outline what I call the 10 Commandments of Character Development. And that's going to be particularly relevant to the topic we're talking about tonight, because tonight we're going to take a more in-depth look at an example of character disturbance that I'm sure, unfortunately, that you are aware of already. It made headlines earlier this past week, only to be displaced by other news as far as front page attention, but it's a really egregious example. And a lot of the things that I have to say in character disturbance with respect to making sure in the child rearing process that we teach some fundamental lessons that build character, and to monitor our children carefully for their character development, because that's what really counts. It counts more than anything. I've said this time and time again. I'll say it once more. I don't mind saying it over and over again. I don't mind sounding like a broken record on this, but I dare anyone to find a socio-cultural problem that we have today, even an economic problem that we have today, that doesn't stem directly in some way to the character crisis that we face. Just think about it. Even the disaster on Wall Street that caused the financial collapse of some institutions and brought the country to the brink of bankruptcy not too long ago was all due to certain scalawags and their practices. And no rules that we have in place are ever sufficient, because bad characters among us, you know what? They always find a way around the rules. And besides which, sometimes they just flat out disregard them. Every rule we make is dependent upon the voluntary compliance of those responsible people among us. So we can't legislate our way out of this problem, and we certainly can't therapize our way out of this problem, at least with traditional methods of therapy. They were not designed to help with the character crisis that we face. Most forms of psychotherapy were designed to help folks who are already functioning fairly responsibly and who are struggling with fears and insecurities and hang-ups that they barely understand and they need insight into in order to lead richer, fuller, healthier, less anxious lives. And that's what psychotherapy is meant for. It's not meant for the problems that we have today, and yet so many of the disturbed characters among us are referred for mental health evaluations and treatment in various centers as a way to try and basically re-raise them. And it's marginally effective at best because our therapeutic methods were not designed for this for the most part. That's a highly specialized art, an art that I kind of specialized in myself for many years in practice. So I know how difficult it is and how different a mode of providing assistance, that kind of assistance is when you're delivering it. But I want to turn to an event that occurred earlier in the week. It involves two 12-year-old girls. And I trust that many of you listening tonight have seen something on TV or have read something in the newspaper, or maybe heard something on radio about these two girls. And I have on my blog at www.manipulative-people.com. That's www-manipulative. I'll give that again because I messed it up. www.manipulative-people.com. On my blog, just this past week, I posted an article on these two girls. Title of the article is called A Case of Arrested Empathy Development. And that's asking a question. The tagline for this post on my blog is, in the absence of empathy, it's absolutely impossible to form a functional, mature conscience. And in the absence of conscience, civilization simply cannot be sustained. That's what we're witnessing. And we're not just witnessing it here in America, we're witnessing it all over the place. Civilization can't be sustained in the absence of conscience. And not just any conscience. Not just any conscience, because many people are very convicted about things. Wrongly so, wrongly convicted. Really, it's more important to have a right conscience, a proper conscience, a conscience that is balanced and reasoned. But in the absence of empathy, you can't even form a mature conscience. And we had a case come to our attention this past week. Two young girls. Their names are Morgan Geiser, or Geyers. Let me get that name straight for you. I don't want to mess it up. Yeah, Morgan Geiser, Morgan Geiser, and Anissa Ware, both 12 years old. 12 years old. These young girls, it turned out, plotted to murder an acquaintance. This young female acquaintance actually had a sleepover at one of the girls' house. They knew her from their middle school. But one girl especially, Morgan, she had gotten into these tales online that featured this mythical character, Slender Man. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not. But anyway, there's this ghoulish figure that appears in some online horror kinds of stories, known as Slender Man. And in order to get into this ghoulish figure, this mythical figure's good graces and to become part of the inner circle online, these girls plotted a murder. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. A lot of you are thinking, just like I read in the newspaper, well, kids, young kids, they can't tell fact from fiction. That's why we really need to be careful what they see and what they hear, especially online. This is true. This is no doubt true. And, once again, it goes to character, because there are people putting this trash out there. And they might want to call it art, when in fact it has the potential to do great harm. And the people putting it out there know that. So that's a matter of character too. So once again, the broken record, here you go. I dare you to find a problem that isn't related to what I consider to be the defining issue of our age. And I'm going to keep saying it. Anyhow, a legitimate point. We do have to be careful of the kinds of garbage that we put before our young people. The kind of culture that they are in has a lot to do with the kinds of values they eventually adopt. No doubt. I'm not going to argue that. As a matter of fact, I've written many articles about that myself. And in The Character Disturbance, my book, and on many of the articles that I've written on my blog, I make the point that until we make significant changes in our cultural milieu, we're not going to see a reversal of this character problem that is mounting every single day. So I take no issue with that. I have no argument with folks who say, my God, we really have to do something about these online things, and we really need to be careful what our young people are exposed to. We need to monitor them better, etc., etc. No qualms with that. But here's the issue. Here's the even bigger issue. This young girl, Morgan Geyer, even told police this. She calmly related, very calmly related, her act. She didn't deny it. She just gave a blow-by-blow description. She described the attack itself as stabby, I'm quoting now, quote, stabby, stab, stab, end quote. And she said, now get this, and apparently she said, according to several news articles, that she was surprised. She was surprised not only how easy it was to carry out this crime, but that she didn't have any qualms, that she experienced no remorse. She said that the good part of her felt a little bad. But the bad part of her didn't care. Now, once again, I can hear some of the criticisms, and I can hear some of the rationales that some folks might offer, that perhaps this girl was really mentally not there. Who's going to argue that point? Perhaps she's not a very well put together individual. However, once again, this is a matter of character. Children's character should matter to parents. And parents of good character keep an eye on that. And adults in responsible positions of good character keep an eye on that. And they know how to assess character. And when they see individuals who are not functioning in a healthy way, they take action. But once again, to the main point, where was this young person's empathy for her victim? these two children who committed these slayings, they knew this girl. She was an acquaintance of theirs. She spent the night over one of their houses. And they planned their assault for a while, for several weeks. Matter of fact, they discussed several options. Can you believe that? They discussed how they might carry it out. Not only how they might carry it out, but how they would get away with it. Now, of course, being young and pretty stupid, they really didn't have a good plan, but at least they contemplated it. This is the most horrible thing. One of the things they contemplated was they were going to get her into a dark bathroom by some trees at a park. There happened to be a drain there and facilities there, so they figured that if they stabbed her to death there, it would be easier to clean up. That was just one of their proposed scenarios about how they were going to do this. Another scenario they considered was they were going to duct tape her while she was sleeping so that she couldn't make noise. Maybe they would have her over on another sleepover. I don't know. Duct tape her mouth while she was sleeping and then stab her in the neck until she bled to death. Cold and calculatingly plotting the demise of a school acquaintance at 12 years old. Now, I'm going to digress for just a little bit because I want to make some points really strongly here. For so many years, we have been told ridiculous things like it's abuse that turns folks into bad people. Sometimes there is history of abuse in folks who turn out a bad character. Sometimes that's true. But you know what? People who have been abused, some people turn out with remarkable character. And some people who have had the best of everything, good rearing, been taught values, they've been reared in every possible good way, have had every benefit, had all the nurturing they needed, still turn out to be thugs and predators. So this rush to judgment, this presumption that has almost always been the case with regard to people who do horrible things, that they must come from horrible backgrounds and that they're just, quote unquote, acting out the scars of their traumatized childhood. No, this is not necessarily the case. As a matter of fact, increasingly, it's not the case. And I make the point in Character Disturbance, really, if you haven't gotten Character Disturbance, I urge you, please do. Please read it. If you have any doubts about whether or not you really need to read it, visit my blog at www.manipulative-people.com. Read any number of the hundreds of free articles. Listen to the comments by so many of the wonderful commentators and contributors that share their experiences and share their opinions and also share their experiences in using my material to help improve their lives. Check that out, because in so doing, you may find that you really do need to read Character Disturbance. And if I do say so myself, because I consider this the defining issue of our age, I really think everybody needs to read it. But in the book, I talk about, and I've written a couple of articles about this as well, I talk about how socialization is a process. We are not, I'm going to repeat this, we are not born civilized. We are not born innocent either. No, we're not. You know that little infant, right from the earliest times, there's a difference between their cries of distress and those cries when they're pitching a fit. Do you know that? Even little infants, when they cry, there's a difference in their cries. Some cries mean, I'm scared, I'm hungry, I'm alone, and I don't know what to do. Please help me. You know, because all babies can do is cry. But some cries are like, damn it, what's going on here? That's some cries. And as a child grows and develops, they interact with their environment, and they get messages from their environment, and they get experiences that help shape them, but they're also equipped by nature with their own innate predispositions. And what we know about some people, the folks that turn out to be what we call psychopaths or sociopaths, and I might do a special program on just that personality type one of these times pretty soon, because unfortunately mental health professionals have so frequently misused and misinterpreted these terms that and substituted them, that many folks have difficulty understanding what they mean. But if you want a really good read that's not mine, if you don't want to just buy In Sheep's Clothing or Character Disturbance and read all you need to know about the individuals that I call in my books the predatory aggressives, but other people call psychopaths and sociopaths, read Dr. Robert Hare's book, Without Conscience. That'll give you a pretty good grounding, as will Martha Stout's book, The Sociopath Next Door. But frankly, I take some issues with that book. Good book, good point to make that not all psychopaths or sociopaths are hardened criminals or serial killers. Some are your bank executives that live next door. So point well taken, but there are other issues with that book. But there's some good reads out there about the subject. But one thing we know about folks who turn out to be that way is that, one, they have a remarkable lack of empathy. In some cases, the capacity for empathy is simply not there. In other words, they seem to be innately predisposed not to be able to develop any empathy. You can really try to teach it to them. You can try to help them learn to see and to value the pain of others and to imagine for themselves what others could be going through, and to take that into consideration and keep it in mind when they're about to take some kind of action. But somehow they just don't seem to have even the capacity for empathy. The other thing that many psychopaths can do is that if they have some capacity for empathy, they also have the uncanny ability to turn it off, just like a light switch, to do what we call compartmentalizing of their emotions. So they compartmentalize or put in a kind of mental lockbox any emotion that they might have, so that they can freely carry out the dastardly deeds that they plan. It's amazing, is it not, that somebody could do that? But that's what psychopaths can do. So either they innately lack the empathy, lack the ability to identify with the pain of others, appreciate it, take it into consideration, have any concern for somebody else's welfare. That makes them incapable of genuine love, which is why Donna Anderson called her book Love Fraud. It's not possible for them to really love, though they can even look like they adore you. They could worship you. They could shower you with affection so that they can win you over. But once they have you, can they really care for you? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And when they're done with you, they're done. When you cease to be of use to them, they're through with you. But this is what psychopaths do. So they either, when it comes to empathy, either they just don't have it because they have no innate capacity for it, or they have this uncanny ability to compartmentalize it, to put it in a lockbox mentally, so that they can just go ahead and do the horrible thing that they're contemplating doing and then not feel bad about it. I gave an example of this. I think everybody should see the movie. It would make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. Or read the book In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, based on a true story of these two-bit criminals, psychopaths, who demonstrated that very ability to compartmentalize emotion, had pity on one of the elderly people that was held hostage in this farm home that they broke into in rural Kansas, even got her a shawl, had her sit in her favorite rocking chair because she was cold and she was afraid, and then blew her brains out because they couldn't possibly risk that she could identify them. So that ability to compartmentalize emotion and then go ahead and do the horrible, heinous thing that you want to do, that's what individuals who have psychopathic tendencies can do. And that's what I want to point to in this egregious example that we saw last week of character disturbance in children as young as 12. Now, I got to tell you, that kind of what I call, and others call, well, I call it predatory aggression, others call it instrumental aggression. And in my books, I call the psychopathic personality the predatory aggressive personality, because they are a brand of aggressive personality that preys on their own kind. You know, we're the only species around, the human species is, where there are a group of us, where there is a group of individuals among us that preys upon their own kind. This is just phenomenal. But these two young girls, I think, are an example of that ability to compartmentalize emotion, and that does not bode well for their character development. So I don't care what kind of therapy they get or what kind of judgment is ruled about their act. You know, we seem to think that we will deter these things or that we will net out justice. Many times when something, you know, really heinous occurs, the first thing we want to do is try young people as adults. We think that'll fix it. Or give them stiff sentences. You know, it misses the mark, especially with young people. What really matters is that they develop some degree of character, that they develop some degree of empathy. And unfortunately, we live in a culture. Now, I know this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but I'm saying it anyway. We live in a culture where so many of our institutions have eroded to the point, and where so many of the messages that we send rampantly and without any character to our young people in this country make it difficult to develop empathy, make it difficult to develop character. And that's why we have the character crisis. That's exactly why we have the character crisis that faces us. I don't know how many of you agree. Maybe you don't. Call in and tell me so. I'd love to debate you on the topic. 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296 if you want to call in. But here's the thing that's even rarer about this example with the two girls. It's rare enough that you have cold-blooded killers in your midst. That's rare enough. Fortunately, folks with no empathy that can do these cold, callous things without, as this young girl reported, feeling any remorse for it or finding it easy to do because they don't have any qualms about it, that's extremely rare. Even rarer is that someone this young would do such a thing. And rarer yet, that they would be females. Rare. Very rare. The movie Monster was about this female serial killer who attributed all her actions to the damage she sustained from sexual abuse. Well, I know lots of sexual abuse survivors who are not serial killers. I got news for you. That's not to make light of the tragedy that she sustained. But it goes to the common denominator in all heartless, senseless crimes, and that is no empathy. No empathy for the victim. It's almost easy. This young girl reported it was surprisingly so. She was surprised that she didn't experience the kind of qualms that she thought she might. It was no big deal. Folks, that's got to send shivers up and down your spine. If things, we become so desensitized. I've got a call coming in. I want to take this, so I'm going to conference this in. Hang on just a second. Hello, welcome to Character Matters.
Oh, hi, Dr. Simon.
Hello.
I had a question for you.
Okay.
In regards to being able to compartmentalize emotion. Do you find that someone who has sustained a lot of emotional turmoil in their life has been able to find a way around the hurt by compartmentalizing?
Yeah, I'm going to rephrase that question for you, if you don't mind, because I think what you're basically asking is, can you learn to compartmentalize?
Correct.
And the answer to that is, of course. Yes, we can learn to compartmentalize. Does that necessarily mean that all compartmentalization is learned? No, I don't think so. But I think you're absolutely right to bring up the point. I do think that individuals, unfortunately, can be in certain circumstances where that's the only really adaptive survival mechanism that they learn. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I mean, especially if you were a sensitive child and when you had family issues and lots of arguing as a child, you had to find a way to protect yourself against that. But not only that, I mean, when I was a kid, when I would see a dead animal on the side of the road, I would get so sad. When I discovered that hamburger was actually cows that I was eating, I was just so upset. And I had to learn to be able to take things that really disturbed me and to be able to lock them away if it was necessary.
Yes, yes. And, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that as an example, because one thing we know that is a huge red flag for individuals who are going to later in life perhaps develop the kinds of characters that we call psychopathic or sociopathic is that when they do, when they are young children and they see a wounded animal or something like that, they don't have that kind of reaction that you just described. As a matter of fact, they're the kids that seem to get their jollies many times torturing animals. And that's a very big red flag. So I'm glad you gave that example.
Right. So just because someone compartmentalizes their emotions as an adult, if it were a learned behavior, that doesn't necessarily make you a psychopath, correct?
No, not at all. Not at all. But what I was talking about here is, you know, obviously there's going to be a lot of discussion in this case about all the possible contributing factors. But the big elephant in the room should be, where was the angst? Where was the unnerving that this young girl thought might be there, but was surprised? She calmly related this to the police. She said, I was surprised how easy it was, and that I didn't feel bad, and that I don't feel any remorse. She used the term remorse. She thinks she knows what it means, and she doesn't feel it. Now, if that doesn't send some chills up and down your spine, if that doesn't unnerve you in some way, that a 12-year-old girl could relate this?
Yeah, it's very disturbing. I believe they're charging them as adults as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last thing you said.
I believe that they are planning on charging them as adults.
Yes, of course. That's almost always our solution. You know, if we just that's probably another program. You know, there's going to be arguing on both sides. There's going to be arguing on both sides that, you know, 12 years old, they're not capable of the kind of reasoning that we should expect. You know, especially if they're in some way troubled. But that's almost always our solution. We make our decisions based on our outrage, as opposed to any semblance of reason. So yeah, it wouldn't be a bit surprising to me if that were the case. I think it's unfortunate. I also think it's unfortunate that two young girls with the problems that they must have had fly under the radar. We are so immune, do you not think, to this character issue, to this character crisis, that we almost kind of expect it, that we almost don't sound the alarm unless some egregious example is right in front of us and right in our face?
Well, I mean, I think that there had to be some signs, at least that the parents must have seen in at least one of the girls' behavior, and the fact that it didn't raise any red flags with the parents. I mean, I didn't hear anything about the girls being in any type of therapy or anything like that beforehand either.
No. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but do you remember when parents actually used to be primarily concerned with their children's character and how it was coming along, and took that seriously as their number one role in life?
Well, I think still even back in the 70s, parents were concerned about you being polite and, you know, being environmentally friendly and tried to encourage you. I think once we got into the 80s with technology and as, the carrot was dangling, to get the bigger, the best, the newest, the fast. I think that's where things started to deteriorate.
But that does go to character once again. I mean, the temptations that we face. I mean, all you have to do is read some of the ancient writings of philosophers and whatnot who talked about, Socrates even talking about the generation of his time going to the dogs. The same kinds of things, But what I'm saying is that character matters. That's why this program is titled that. It matters for so many reasons. And if it isn't the number one task of a family, and if it isn't the number one task of a society, that society will not stand. It simply will not stand very long.
I absolutely agree.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Do you have any experience like this yourself, where you have seen maybe the signs in someone who you thought was really heading down a dangerous path, and that if they didn't get some help really soon, that something terrible was likely to happen?
Oh, sure. All kinds of experience. I have family members with some similar issues that you talk about, so I've been a witness to this for many years.
Wow.
And yes, one is deceased. One's actually made it to 70 years old, so it was a big surprise. Really?
Yeah. Well, I have a friend who will be 73 years old this fall, sometime in August. I don't think I should give out any more information than that. He might be listening. But he is just now getting it, character-wise. I mean, just now.
Wow.
And he has an older brother who still doesn't get it. Who's still a complete mess that the family is still cleaning up for. And that brother's almost 80 years old.
Wow.
I mean, if that isn't tragic.
Well, and it's very tragic. And one thing that I've heard you say over and over again is that people with these personality disturbances, you really can't fix them. I mean, you can't for anything. You can't fix somebody. They have to fix themselves. But if they never admit that something is really wrong, nothing is wrong.
I'm so glad that you said that, and that you mentioned it in that way. Because one of the things that I describe in character disturbance, and that I probably should have done an even better job describing, is this unique form of therapy that I had to develop myself, because nobody's trained to do it, to do precisely what you said. You can't fix this. The person has to do it themselves. So I had to devise a mode of therapeutic assistance by which I encourage and reinforce people for self-monitoring and self-correcting and charting a different course. And once they get a taste of more pro-social behavior, it's a kind of taste and see approach. Once they get a taste of more pro-social behavior and what can come of it, the fruits of that, then the light bulb goes off and they think, this is what I've been missing all these years, and this is why this part of my life has been a shipwreck, blah, 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 blah. But they fix themselves. Now, I am not going to say that I have a magic pill in a bottle, because dealing with people who have serious disturbances of personality of character is very arduous work. And it has a low percentage of success, and it depends so much, as you say, on the voluntary compliance of the person. But that's the big, big difference in specialized therapy for character disturbance. And it's the real tragedy is that very, very few professionals even understand this problem, let alone are skilled in the techniques to deal with it effectively. That's a tragedy.
Well, I think the saddest part that I've seen with it is that because of their behavior, they alienate so many people, and in the end, they end up lonely and bitter and hating the world. And they seem to have this need for adrenaline and this need for altercations or anything that's going to make their life exciting, except when they make their life exciting, they make other people's lives miserable. You know? And I think that it's very difficult. I mean, the people that I've known with this issue, many of them become suicidal or they become alcoholics and don't want to associate with the world, and they deteriorate.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to think. I mean, at 70, finally, I'm seeing some improvement in my one family member. But, I mean, I have a few friends with the same disorder, and it's the same story over and over again. And they like to hurt people, and the ones that are there caring for them are the ones that they hurt the most.
Yeah. What you describe is a thing that we call sensation seeking. And it is a quality that does appear very early on in development in individuals who are predisposed to have these character disturbances. And basically they're chasing highs of some type or another all their lives. And what matters is the titillation of the moment. And they never seem to get beyond that. So their relationships always lack depth. They're very intense on the front end because, of course, novel new experiences are exciting, right? So
Right.
When the relationship is new and it's fresh and it's exciting, they're on cloud nine. But then, as the relationship is no longer novel and it's no longer a thrill a minute, and the challenge, therefore, is to have deepening, genuine regard for the person, they can't do it. They simply can't do it. And what do? Many times they go out looking for another thrill. So that is a quality that is part and parcel of character disturbance. I've written some articles about that too online. But you're right to point to that, because that is another one of the red flags, as is this problem with empathy. And that, of course, is the elephant in the room that I wanted to speak to on tonight's program with these girls. That unnerves me a lot. And as I said before, not just because they're without the empathy, because we know that there are people like that out there, but that they were so young, and also that they were girls.
Yeah.
This is not, I don't want to be sexist about this, but this is not a trait that is more prevalent among women. It's extremely rare among women. They seem to be gifted with a different sense of value for human life, kind of having, I don't want to say necessarily an innate mothering instinct, but they do have some instinctual things going for them that are more conducive to an appreciation for life in general, and a kind of automatic internal revulsion at the thought of something heinous like this. So obviously, this is a huge wake-up call, or should be to us. It's a huge sign. Something really serious is going on within our culture. That children this young, especially female, could be so desensitized, so callous, and be able to relate it. You know, you would almost think that later on, when coming to their senses and then fessing up, that in the telling and in the rehearsing of the story and getting it out there and then seeing it for themselves, then at least maybe then there would be some kind of unnerving. Maybe they couldn't get through it. But no, they were able to relate this just matter of fact. Now, you know what else, it'd be very interesting to see what happens when there's a trial, if there's a trial in this case. Because as was evidenced in the Jodi Arias trial, do you remember that case, Jodi Arias? She's the one that killed the boyfriend, actually traveled to another state to do it. This was in Arizona. But she was able to, on the stand, in telling her story, claim all kinds of abuse, that she was afraid, and feign the tears. And when she told her story, the way she emoted made it almost look like she was having some remorse. But unfortunately for everyone, she ended up not being able to pull that off very well, and nobody bought it. But the fact is that some people can feign those emotions and make it look like they feel when they don't. That's really scary, too.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for taking my call tonight, Dr. Simon. I'll let you finish up your show.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. Take care.
Take care.
Well, I just can't say enough about this issue and how it unnerves me personally and as a professional. I was trained to help people, and I got into the business because I wanted to help people. And I was trained to appreciate that there were folks who were in inner distress, not of their own making. Maybe they had sustained various types of trauma growing up. Maybe they suffered abuse and neglect. Maybe they had such an unstable upbringing that they couldn't lay down firm roots and feel bonded. Maybe they had fears and insecurities they had never overcome. And I got into my professional career to do something about that. But what I saw time and time and time again happening is people coming into my office primarily drugged by the ear, pressured by the courts, pressured by their parents, or drug in by the ear by a spouse who had it up to their eyeballs with the shenanigans of their wayward spouse. Folks who at 30, 40, 50, 55, even 60 years of age still hadn't grown up, had developed no character. It was a real wake-up call to the defining issue of our time. So I've made it my life's mission to do what I can, to do two things. Number one, to sound the alarm. If I do no more than that, I'll have done something, because, no problem is ever solved, ever, until it's first recognized. It's kind of like 12 steps, and the first step within the 12 steps, you can't tackle a problem until you admit you have one. So admitting and acknowledging what the problem is, that's step one. And then doing what we really need to do as a society to examine those socio-cultural factors that are enabling this problem, even encouraging this problem, allowing children to develop with so little character that they could commit a heinous crime like we read about last week. So I'll keep sounding the alarm, and we'll keep talking about these matters on Character Matters. And